Turn with me to James 4 this morning. James chapter 4. I've been planning on preaching on who is my neighbor. And a last minute change. I should say from my supervisor. You ever bump into that? You know, things change, supervisor passes down the word. My Lord does that every once in a while. 2 times in a row this week, that's strange. But I'm willing to roll with it.
Amen. I
really like James chapter 4. It's an exciting chapter, just teaching us some basics of our spiritual life and how we can translate them or transition from the spiritual into the physical. James chapter 4. This morning I'll just use the verses I need as I present them. I'll read the first 5 verses here in a moment. Now, sometimes our length of life depends, it determines the outcome of at least 2 unknowns, most often for which we're little prepared. 2 unknowns. During our life, or our youth of our life, we're filled with the thrill of life, the hope of independence, and the desire to make something of ourselves. Most of us, no matter how hard we try to be a bit different, we live our lives the way we were raised. You live your early life stubbornly and sometimes rebelliously trying to change the pattern, and you end up living in the pattern of your family, whether it's your mother or father. But when we all reach a certain age, personal choices were faced and individual decisions were made. Right now, those are known in our lives, but when you speak with someone who's still in the youth of life, they're still in the throes of personal choices and long-term decisions. Those are still unknowns for them. It's kind of refreshing on this side to see the results of many personal choices and long-term decisions, how they've come out and how they've affected each one of us. If you pause for a moment, you might think of how certain decisions, certain choices have made you who you are or are still in the process. Verses 1 through 5, James chapter 4 says, "From whence, where do wars and fightings come from among you? Come they not hence, even of your lusts that war in your members? This fighting, this discontent. You lust and have not, you kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you have not, because you ask not." Now, he's not talking about the asking and receiving. It's not a promise. It is that we ask according to His will. I like the way Brother Heber prays most of the time, subject to your will. Because it is. It's subject to His will. You can ask. I joked in the adult class number 1 that, in 6 years we're all going to have $1 million. If you don't spend another dime, you might.
Yeah, exactly.
Just save it all, you might. We ask sometimes amiss, because it's not according to His will. Why wouldn't it be His will for me to have $1 million? What's that to Him? I know we joke a lot about that. He knows our needs, and He knows the difference between our needs and our wants.
Exactly.
Sometimes we ask, but we receive not because we don't ask for the right purpose. No matter how many times we promise God, I'll give most of it to missions. I could survive on 10% of $1 million annually. I could do that. 100 grand would, I'd make it work. Verse 4 says, "Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God?" He gives you who he's talking about. He's talking about that if you love the world more than you love me as the Father, you're committing spiritual adultery. That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about the physical act of adultery. He's talking about versus the world versus God. "Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God." Do ye think that the Scriptures saith in vain, "The Spirit that dwelleth in us lusteth to envy"? That's what's inside of us. Number one this morning, discipline yourself while you can. Discipline yourself while you can. Discipline is a personal choice. And most often I'm talking about the external disciplines. The things that intrude into the personal, external intruding into the personal. We discipline ourselves in a personal way to protect ourselves from those external things that alter our circumstance. Sometimes I see this true in my own life. Arguments come when we have undisciplined minds. When you give in to what the flesh wants, what your desire, your lust, "I want my way," that's when an argument will arise. Because you both feel the same way. You both want your way. Both parties want their own way. Both parties are full of undisciplined minds. Minds that aren't disciplined before God. I see that illustrated in the first 3 verses. We ask amiss. "I want God to do this." He's not going to jump just because you want him to. It has to be according to his will. "Get him, God." No, it's not going to work like that. It's not going to. It's nice to say, it feels good in the moment. "You wait, God's going to get even." Yeah, but not like you think. Not like you think. He's going to give this world its way, and then they'll be forced to acknowledge him. Maybe it'll be too late.
Right.
Because discipline is severely lacking in our world today. Discipline is personal, but it can also be for the external use, protecting ourselves from this world's circumstances. I also see when anyone who has an undisciplined life or mind, you're going to seek the approval of the world, not the approval of God. We talked about it in Sunday school briefly at the close of our time together. Our first love. What is our first love? I mentioned it. John, the writer of Revelation, we talked about it a few weeks back. He told one of the churches, you sinned because you left your first love. I'm not talking about your puppy love. I'm not talking about that one girl that, she hit all the right buttons. And, no. I'm talking about the love you have for Christ.
Amen.
When you're saved, he becomes your first love. He becomes everything to you and I. He is all in all. He's all you need. But what the blessing is, he continues to give you the fulfilling relationships and enhances them if you will just discipline yourself. I love my wife, and she loves me because we both love Christ first. We meet each other's needs and enjoy each other as friends in all aspects because we have disciplined ourselves in life to Christ. Many that choose the opposite, you see in verse 4, they begin to commit spiritual adultery. They begin to partake of what the world has to offer and still try to balance a Christian life. It will never work. It just doesn't work. That's an undisciplined life, an undisciplined mind. Eventually, God says you're going to have to choose whom you will serve.
That's right.
God or man. Those are his words, not me. I'm just repeating what God said.
Right.
You'll have to come to a place in life, if you choose to be undisciplined, you're going to have to choose, who will I serve? Whom shall you serve? Who will you allow to rule your heart? Inevitably, that's what it'll come to. I told Karen this morning, I struggle. I do understand where the world's at, but then again, they have to totally blind their minds to Christ in order to believe some of the things that come from the news today.
Yeah.
You have to shut your brain off and just say, yes, I accept everything that I'm told. You have to do that. How can you accept the reality of what is proven to be true and then say that's not true? Those are lies. That didn't happen. You truly have to surrender your mind, heart, and life to something at some point in life. Many already have. And they're buying the deception. What scares me, and Karen and I talk about it, because of the internet and because of what's available and how you can stay connected to people now via email and Facebook and all these other devices. You see Christians rising up, standing for things that are contrary to God, and I'm afraid that's an undisciplined mind.
Yeah.
That's an undisciplined life. All you have to do is read what God said and follow it. That's as simple as can be. God's not going to stand with someone who murders babies.
That's right. Amen.
If someone says, I'm pro-choice, you murder babies.
Amen.
If you sign to do that, you're agreeing with them.
Yeah.
You're an undisciplined mind.
Good preaching. Amen.
Who shall you serve with heart, mind, and life? Secret desires are becoming the norm now. We're seeing them every day revealed. Are we going to allow those secret desires to control us? If you are, you're showing an undisciplined mind. You're an undisciplined person. Secondly, this morning, verses 6 through 10. But he giveth more grace. I'm thankful for that statement.
Yes.
Because we're living in a time when we as Christians need more grace. We need his grace desperately. Because I'm a human. I really want to lash out. I'm sick and tired of all the junk coming through today's society. I'm tired of it. I want to defend myself against it. But he giveth more grace. I can pause and take a breath and reassure myself in knowing that when it really does go from the pan into the fire, we'll be up there. And we'll be going, wow. Maybe. I like to be on the portals of glory. I hope he'll let us watch it all unfold. I really would love it. At the very least, give us all a copy of the DVD. I really want to see how he comes down here, and he's just going to fix it.
Amen.
He's coming down here to rule with a rod of iron. I can just see that. He's walking around. Some folks, just don't like to submit. We should submit while we can. Because he's going to come down here. You might tell folks, you might want to learn to submit while you can. If you're not saved by God's grace, you might want to learn to submit. Whether you like it or not. Because he's going to come down here. You don't want to submit? What? You don't want to submit? What? You don't want to submit? And he's just going to swing that mighty rod of iron, and folks are going to learn to bow real quick.
Yeah.
It'll be too late. They'll have no eternal reward. There's no hope of glory. He's just going to rule with a rod of iron until he just remakes it all. We have Christ. If you are of Christ this morning, shouldn't it be the easiest thing to do to submit to Christ? Shouldn't it? Because you have the Spirit of God.
Amen. That's right.
He says in verses 6 through 10 that he giveth more grace. He doesn't give grace to the lost. They're in his grace that he's not killing them.
Right.
But he gives more grace to you and I to endure patiently waiting that time at the end when we hear that beautiful trump of God. Because right now it's hard to wait. So he says, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. And we've talked a lot about this in the last couple months. If we want to see God's blessing before the time of the end, before he takes us home, we've got to humble ourselves. Remember the next word? What did he say? And, anyone? Pray. Turn from our wicked ways and seeking his face. Then will I hear from heaven. Then he's going to do something. But until then, he giveth more grace. He resists those that are lifted up in pride and self-will and stubbornness. and He gives grace to the humble. So what do? Verse 7, submit yourselves therefore to God. That's a standalone sentence. Submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. The devil doesn't like it when you humble yourself before God and say, Lord, in this moment I'm really having a struggle with Satan, the lust of the flesh, it's really getting on me. Would you help me this moment? He has to flee. He has to leave your presence for a time. Not forever, just long enough to give you a way of escape in that moment of temptation. Well, what do I do in the meantime? I'm glad you asked. Verse number 8 says, draw nigh to God, and He will draw nigh to you. You know the saying. You scoot a little, He scoots a little. You remember the illustration I gave last year? Two folks been married for, well, they've been married for 60 years or more, right? And she drives most of the time. We see her driving, and he's sitting there, and if ever he wonders why there's such distance, she's driving. He must have moved.
Who moved?
Who moved? Well, I'm driving, honey. You must have moved. So it's true with Christ.
Right.
He's in control. He's driving this ship. He's captaining the vessel. If we ever wonder why we feel so alone in life, why do we feel so distant from you, Lord?
We moved.
Get back where you need to be. I'm captaining the vessel. I'm spearheading this whole thing. Draw nigh to me. I'll put my wing out. You just come right out of the place of comfort and security and submission.
That's good.
Discipline yourself while you can. Submit yourself while you can. Draw nigh to God, and He will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your heart, ye double-minded. Two groups of people here. We now, as child of God, are saints who sin.
Right.
We aren't eternal sinners anymore. We're saints of God who still struggle with sin. There are unrepentant sinners as well. If you're saved, you're not that group. You are a saint, a child of God, you still struggle with sin. But it does not any longer hold an eternal punishment. There are unrepentant, one of those two grammatical uses. There are sinners who haven't repented to God, and they have an eternal punishment that they still will answer for. He doesn't want us to be double-minded.
Yeah.
He wants us just to submit ourselves to His will. Sometimes we don't understand it. Many times we don't like it. That doesn't change the fact the grass is green. Just eat it. The water's cool and clear. Drink it. Those who are of a graceful spirit have little difficulty submitting to His leadership. You got more grace, and He asks more from you. You employ more of His grace, and you're willing to give more of yourself to His guidance. All those, though, who reject godly authority, they just struggle throughout life with bitterness, depression, and consistently give themselves over to discouragement. You ever talk to people in the world? I'm so depressed right now. I'm so discouraged right now. Do you have a personal relationship with the Lord? Huh? Do you know the Lord is your Savior? What? What's that got to do with me? Everything.
It does. That's right.
It's all about who you have submitted yourself to. In the moment you're submitting yourself to a lying, deceiving devil. Well, that would shock them, wouldn't it? And you don't need a college degree to say it.
That's right.
Be afflicted, verse number 9, and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to heaviness. Well, why would He do that? If you've immersed yourself in sin and you live a double-minded life, when affliction and mourning comes upon you, your laughter is going to be turned to mourning, your joy to heaviness. If you don't learn to submit yourself to the mighty hand of God. What do we do? How do we fix it? Humble yourselves, therefore, in the sight of the Lord, and yourself while you can. I don't submit myself to anybody. There will come a day when every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess his name. Wouldn't it be such a blessing to do it now of your own free volition? Submission is simply defined. The word submit means to yield, then accept the authority. I'm speaking, of course, the spiritual use of the word. Submission means yield yourself, then accept the authority and will God has placed over you. As if he is right here lovingly leading you. Look to his face. Look as if you could see him looking at you, saying, come along, child. Come on, step forward. It's okay. I've got control. I'm leading you in the way you should go. I'll put your foot right in the steps of security if you'll just submit yourself to me. That is a reality to you and I, if you'll just submit yourself while you can. And last, communicate while you can. Verses 11 through 17. Speak not evil one of another, brethren. Standalone sentence. If you don't have anything good to say about someone, you remember what Grandma said? Don't say anything at all. He that speaketh evil of his brother and judgeth his brother speaketh evil of the law and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. God didn't leave any judges behind. He just didn't. He left his Holy Spirit behind. He sent the Comforter. The Comforter shall come. When you're saved, you don't need someone running around policing your activities. You just need to listen to the Spirit of God. Because there's one lawgiver who is able to save and to destroy. Who art thou that judgest another? Godly judgment leads everyone into the safety of spiritual, wholesome communication. Bad judgment or unused wisdom will always end with fault-finding and or blaming others. Does that ring true today? Can you watch any news segment without seeing bad judgment, fault-finding, blaming others? That's simply because there's unused wisdom today. We have people of authority, though. Yeah, they're a bunch of fools. They don't follow God whatsoever, but they will. That's why I'm encouraged. They don't right now, but they will. You will follow God one day. Just in case they're watching the video. I've always wanted to say that to their face. Fault finding and blaming, it just shows your lack of wisdom. If I've made a mistake, I've done it. No one forced me to do it. I don't need 2-3 people to tell me you're wrong. I know I'm wrong because I have the Spirit of God. Verses 13 through 16 says, Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city, and continue there a year, buy and sell and get gain, whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? What a statement. What a sentence. For what is your life? I've done this. 30 years I've done this. What is your life? Have you led anyone to Christ? Have you used your authority for anything but personal gain? What is your life? What have you done anything to help this country? It is even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. Just like in the wintertime, stays up there for 2-3 seconds and it's gone. You ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now you rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is, there's that word, evil. We talked a little bit about that in Adult Class 1 this morning. Not used much anymore. God still uses it.
You betcha.
I challenge you, I encourage you to speak words of kindness. Speak words that show your love for others. Speak of godly wisdom before it's too late. Stop living in and just for the moment. Those moments mean nothing apart from Christ. And lastly, verse 17. Therefore, summing it all up, he says, to him that knoweth to do good, and doeth it not, to him it is sin. Words of tenderness left unspoken, they haunt you.
Yeah.
Words that you could have said to someone about Christ that you left unspoken, they'll haunt you. They'll be a shadow on your memory. As you remain closed off, keeping others at arm's length, remaining cold and aloof, or incommunicative. I don't bother people. They don't bother me. I don't bother them. You're robbing yourselves of godly joy. You're robbing yourselves of Christian love. You're robbing yourselves of lasting relationships. All that comes under that one little verse.
Yeah.
Who do you gather around you? What is your circle of communication? Your friends, family, neighbors, co-workers. Who is it that gathers around you? Is it people that love Christ? Are those lasting relationships? Do they bring you lasting joy? I'm talking about beyond happiness in the moment. I'm talking about the joy of a friend that loves you and loves the Lord, and you have those mutual beliefs.
Amen.
There is no promised length of life. Paul talks about that. There's a promise in Ephesians of certain length of life if you've been honorable to your parents. We're all so easily influenced by outside circumstances. I admit I am too. That's why I don't watch too much news. I get upset. I just get angry. I just turn it off. I can't. My flesh wants to lash out. This world is taking the rights that God gave them and dipping them in the pits of Satan and bringing it out and trying to force it down our throat.
Yeah.
I ain't going to choke it down.
Amen.
I'm not going to believe it. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to buy into it either.
Amen. It's good.
We shouldn't be so easily influenced by those outside circumstances or our critical relationships. Sometimes those are so close to home, it's hard. It's difficult to tell someone you love, that's not godly. It's not biblical. That's not my opinion. I'm just saying God is not honored by you doing and saying that. That's hard to say to someone you love. We're influenced by those critical relationships. Well, Yeah, God does know. But He gives you more grace, hoping that the light will come on and you'll figure it out. Critical relationships, you're influenced by trying to be like everybody else. Christian, we can't do that.
That's right.
We cannot follow what everybody else is doing. Doesn't make the majority right, does it?
That's right.
We have to stand for God and righteousness. Whether we're standing there as the only church in town, we have to stand for God and righteousness, for His Word. There's times when you're not going to like it, but you still have to stand. Paul says, and having done all, to stand. I've done everything I can do. I've taken everything, all the junk of the world. I've taken all the armor of God, and I can't do it. Just stand anyway.
Amen.
Just stand. But they're against us. Stand anyway. But they don't love God. Stand anyway. They won't listen. Stand anyway. They don't submit to God. Stand anyway. They don't even discipline themselves. They do whatever they want. They say whatever they want. Stand for God anyway.
Amen.
Use your voice as loud as you can, as often as you can, but make sure it's bathed in the grace of God.
That's good.
I ask you this question in closing. Do you really love while you can? Or are you living life with regrets? Thank you so much, Lord, for this time in your word. And I pray that it has been a challenge in stirring our heart. And Lord, that we would align ourselves with your precious word